how to actually start creating content with ADHD. That is what I'm going to speak about today, and I'm going to share a bit about my journey and what I found works for me. And if you follow these steps, even one of them, I believe that you will be able to start creating content and putting it out there. If this interests you, like, comment, share. I'll be making more of these videos multiple times a week. For me, I spent so much time, you know, thinking about and wanting to create content, worrying about things not being too perfect, things that don't really matter. Lighting, do I need to paint the room I'm in so the color is complementary to my skin? You know, do I need a microphone? Things like that. And I've said this before. I think people don't want perfect, they want real. And the number one thing that I've learned so far is that you will learn as you go. That is the only way. No matter how much preparation you do, how many videos you watch on YouTube or Instagram by the large creators telling you, do this, do that, it really doesn't matter because when you start, you're going to figure out what works for you and what people want to hear from you. So it really is just starting. I know people say that all the time, start tired, start, unprepared, start afraid, but that really, really is the truth. And I think it's also important to acknowledge that everybody takes their own time to get to the point where you are able to have the mindset and be in a space where you've moved beyond worry about being perfect or about what people will think. I think that's something really important to acknowledge that a lot of times is not discussed. It's more about, you need to, just do it. However, I think that it's important, like I said multiple times, to acknowledge that it takes everybody time to get to that point, and that's okay. However, once you've gotten to that point where you're like, you know what, I'm ready to do this, regardless of what people think or, how things are going to look, and, stop worrying about being perfect. Once you get to that point, um, the next thing I would say is the barrier oftentimes is what do I post? Do I need to have a niche? Et cetera, et cetera. And that's a huge weight. And it has been for me. It was for me. So kind of recapping so far. Number one is working through your mindset to get to the point where you're like, you know what? I want to do this. It's important to me. It's important to me not just because it's important, but finding your why is a big part of the process and the shift in mindset of breaking through concerns about perfectionism and shame. So, working through perfectionism, shame, worrying about what people will think. And I would say, alongside of that, is finding your why. Is it for business? Is it for money to feed your family? Whatever it is, it's so important to understand why you want to do this. Is it because you need an outlet? Is it because you're a creative person, and you've been looking for something to channel that into? Whatever it is, it's so important to keep that in mind. The second thing, once you've gotten to that point, is to, again, I think I was speaking about this before, is what to actually post. Do I need to have a niche? Do I not? What I would say is start with what you actually do in your life. And that will really, really help you to narrow things down and at least have a place to start. And have a place to start that doesn't feel so overwhelming. And hopefully, we'll have topics that you can just talk about, right? So what I mean by start with what you actually are doing, it could be your profession. For example, let's say you're an accountant, right? That's what you do. And so you are going to start posting content related to accounting. Okay, so then it's like, all right, what do I actually post? Well, there are so many ways you can go with that. Maybe, for example, you've got ADHD or you've got depression. And so you're posting about how I run my business, my accounting business with ADHD or with depression, or how an accountant who is also a busy dad, you know, prepares breakfast in the morning or meal preps during the day. How as an accountant you mm, manage your money. I mean, well, that's obvious, but I'm trying to come up with things on the spot here, other things on the spot. Let's see, how as an accountant here's one that's directly relatable to what I'm doing as well is how as an accountant you create content, right? How that fits into your day, your business. And so I hope those are good examples of what I mean by start with what you do and then branch out by having like sub things under what you do, but still attached to it. So there's a through line. And so that hopefully the third thing that I was going to say that I'm going to discuss is so hopefully it's something that's interesting to you and things that you can, to some degree, easily speak about. You may need some scripting, but at least it's interesting and at least some of the content includes things that you can riff off of, right? So for me, it's clearly a lot of my content, the through line is ADHD. So, how I create content with ADHD. Other things might come up is that might come up are how I run my business as a psychiatrist with ADHD. Um, you know, Content related to treating patients with ADHD. And, I'm still at the beginning of my journey. And so I will continue to find other sub ADHD things that are applicable to me on the day to day that I can speak about. But I really struggled with, well, what do I post? What's my niche? And the other thing I will say is a lot of times your niche won't be obvious to you, but you can take a look at what's actually going on in your life. Um, so for me, for example, a lot of patients were coming to me with ADHD, um, you know, and it's an experience that I share. And so over time I said, you know what? I'm gonna go with this. I'm gonna go with this because it's something that I know that I care deeply about, that I love to research and read about, and something that I can talk about, and that infiltrates every aspect of my life. And so I hope that, those are some examples that you can apply to yourself and run with to help you start content creating. Because again, those are the biggest barriers, at least in my opinion, to starting content. Number one is mindset. Getting to that point where you're like, you know what? I forget it. Forget it all. I don't care. I'm willing to push through the pain, the emotions, the just discomfort of posting the content, hitting record, thinking about even though you think about what people might think or things aren't perfect. That's number one. Number two is starting with what you do and branching out from that. Right. So again, the accountant example, things like how I managed to become an accountant with ADHD, how I practice accounting with ADHD, how I meal prep for my day as an accountant, right? How I manage my family or my business as an accountant, right? How I travel as an accountant, things like that. Again, because hopefully there will be some interest there and things that to some degree you can speak about freely. And I think the interest part is really important to keep going and to be consistent as well. And the third thing was, gosh, I can't even remember the third thing that I said, but hopefully you'll rewind or you've watched this whole video so that you can recall what everything that I said. Um, I am making this video at almost midnight after a long day. Um, I want to also discuss something that's really, really important, and that is community. Now, that's something that has been really, I would say, essential for me in my journey to getting to this point where I've been able to now record. This is my third video in a row on YouTube. And 2 years ago, I could have never even imagined myself doing this. And so, community, having people around you, whether that's a paid community or friends, colleagues, family members to cheer you on and to give you that support, is essential, in my opinion. And so, if you do everything in this video, I believe that you will follow through and at least start creating content. Now, if things you're looking for help, I'm happy to provide some one-on-one help as well. Just reach out. And if this was interesting to you, again, like, comment, share. Tell me what you'd like to see me discuss in these videos. Again, I'll be publishing at least a few times a week.